What makes an adaptation faithful? Is it slavish adherence to source material, or capturing the essence of what made that source material special in the first place? You know that feeling when you're watching an adaptation of something you love and it's almost there? Like they've captured 80% of what made the original special, but that missing 20% keeps nagging at you? That's where fan editing comes in. To explore what happens when you shift the lens just a few degrees. The Last of Us Part 2, the game, is a narrative puzzle box. The game meticulously controls what you know and when you know it. Every reveal is calculated. Every perspective shift lands like a gut punch. So when you're adapting that for television, you face a fundamental question. How much mystery do you preserve? HBO's version made a choice to pull back the curtain early. We meet Abby, we understand her motivations, we see the bigger picture of Seattle, the WLF, the Seraphites. It's television doing what television does best, world building through multiple viewpoints. But what if you didn't? What if you took a step back and understood what made people connect with this narrative in the first place? Chiral storytelling, weaving memories in the present day in and around each other, but maintaining that a limited perspective is what really drives the connections we have with the characters. That experiment with structure is inarguably what makes the game's narrative stand out, and in so, it's understandable why the show adhered to it in the big picture, but also confusing as to why it continuously undermined itself by making strange, arbitrary lateral moves in so many directions. In doing so, it ends up feeling somehow both absurdly faithful and completely disconnected. Take The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien authored those books with a similar mind for shifting perspectives and intersecting narratives, which were then adapted by Peter Jackson into a single continuous narrative. And it makes you wonder why this adaptation seems to do a strange, confused half-step. What if you could experience Ellie's journey through her eyes alone, with all the confusion, rage, and moral ambiguity that comes with limited perspective? That's essentially what a grounded cut would explore. Take those same performances, that same gorgeous cinematography, and restructure it to follow one guiding principle. We only know what Ellie knows. The ripple effects are immediate. That opening graveyard scene with Abby and her crew, gone. You'd meet them the same way that Ellie does, as armed strangers emerging from the woods over Jackson. No context, no sympathy, just threat. The extended WLF hospital sequences explaining their society, cut. Isaac's backstory, cut. The Seraphite forest sequence that interrupts the core narrative,
Can I have a hammer?
cut. What you'd be left with is something leaner, 6 episodes instead of 7, but also something more mysterious. Who are these people? What is this war in Seattle? Why does any of this matter? These become questions that hang over the season, presumably to be answered in Season 3. A hook that you're excited to explore when the perspectives shift in the final moments of the season. It's not about making a better version, it's about exploring how radically different the same story can feel when you change whose eyes you're looking through. Here's the thing about editing. The big structural changes are actually the easy part. You want to remove a subplot, click, drag, delete, done. The real work, the stuff that takes hundreds of small decisions, lives in the margins. It's in the dialogue trims, the reaction shots, the moments where a character laughs just a beat too long. Take Ellie's characterization. In the game, she's competent, hardened, a survivor who's been doing this for years. But television has this habit of, well, explaining things. So you get moments where Ellie seems confused about how a pregnancy test works, where she needs basic survival tactics explained to her like she's a child, where she shouts, "I'm immune!" to be a dick. Each instance is small, each instance is defensible, but together they add up to a different character. So you'd go through with a scalpel. You're bad at math? Gone. That pregnancy test confusion, you'd trim it. The scene where neither queer character knows what pride is, as if they grew up under a rock instead of in a functioning community with a library, that would go too. I'm gonna be a dad? No, in this cut, you're not. And it's not just about removal, sometimes it's about addition. When Ellie picks up a guitar in the theater and strums the opening chords to Future Days, you might add subtle flash cuts of Joel. something that might make her hesitate, something that might make her put the guitar down and move forward with vengeance on her mind. Not big dramatic moments, just fragments, muscle memory made visual. It's amazing what a half-second insert can do for emotional continuity. And the flashbacks are a tool strangely utilized in the original structure of the season. Instead of isolating them in a standalone episode, you could weave them throughout as emotional anchors. Open the season with Joel's father hoping that he does better as a parent than him. Then move into the key moment where Joel needs to make the choice as to what doing better really entails. The memory of Joel teaching Ellie guitar would ease her into consciousness in a hospital stretcher. Ellie storming off after Joel's betrayal into her returning to the theater in a thunderstorm. Each memory strategically placed to maximize emotional impact. Honestly, some of these transitions make so much sense when you lay them out that it's hard not to envision them as the original intent. Even the credits themselves wouldn't escape scrutiny. In the world of premium television, the writing and directing credits hit hard as the last beats in an opening credit sequence, before being immersed fully in the world of the show. In The Last of Us, for some reason, they'd fade up over the first few shots. In a fan edit, you might move them to fade over black. It's tiny, nobody would consciously notice necessarily, but subconsciously, it maintains immersion just that little bit longer. The goal wouldn't be to sanitize or oversimplify. Ellie still tortures Nora, she still kills a pregnant woman, but you'd trust the audience to understand the weight of these moments without having people spell out their feelings in dialogue. Six episodes, 300 minutes. That's what you'd have after all the cutting and rearranging. But numbers don't tell you how it would feel. The season would end where it always did, with Jesse's blood on the floor and Abby pointing her gun, but the journey there would carry different weight. Without Abby's perspective peppered throughout, her final appearance wouldn't feel like culmination, it would feel like invasion. That's the strange alchemy of this approach. By showing less, you'd actually be saying more about trauma and perspective. Ellie's tunnel vision wouldn't be a storytelling choice you're told about, it would be one you experience. Every missing piece of context, every unanswered question about Seattle would mirror her own psychological state. She doesn't care about the bigger picture, neither should you. The flashbacks would hit differently too. That final porch conversation between Joel and Ellie, I would do it all over again, would no longer be isolated in its own episode. Instead, it would bleed directly into present-day violence, forgiveness and vengeance intertwined. Now, could Ellie have been more of a Sarah Connor in Terminator 2 than an Estelle Getty in Stop or My Mom Will Shoot? Sure, she could have. Would it have been more exciting to see her slash her way through Hillcrest in a bloody, violent oneer a la True Detective Season 1 than to watch a drawn-out assault on Jackson that has no real bearing on the plot? Maybe. Yeah, probably. But you dance with the footage you got, not the footage you wish existed. What this version would lose in scope, it would gain in focus. No more cutting away just as tension peaks, no more deflating horror with explanatory sidebars. Stripped of backstory and explanation, Isaac would transform from character to presence. Imagine just seeing Jeffrey Wright show up for 2 seconds in this season. That single appearance at the docks, silent, commanding, leading those boats, would pose questions that the season refuses to answer. Some threads are meant to dangle. But perhaps the most radical change would be trust. Trust that the audiences can handle ambiguity. Trust that they'll understand Dina and Ellie's relationship without overwrought explanation. Trust that silence can convey what dialogue often dilutes. Trust that there is a reason we're going back to Seattle day one at the end, but through Abby's eyes for season 3. Would this be the definitive version? Of course not. It would be one interpretation among many, each revealing different facets of the same story. The original cut illuminates the full scope of cyclical violence. This approach would trap you inside of it. If you're interested in seeing how this grounded cut plays out in practice, check out the link in the description of this video.